December 7th, 2025. Reading from sutracentral.net. Bhikkhu bodhis in the Buddhist words. Roman numeral 8. Mastering the mind. Bhante Sujato writes, April 2015. Having presented a broad overview of the world transcending path in the previous chapter, in this chapter, Roman numeral number 8, and the next I will intend to focus more specifically on two aspects of this path as described in the Nikayas: meditation and wisdom. As we have seen, the gradual training is divided into the three sections of moral discipline, concentration, and wisdom. The three training of Tiso Sikha or Trai Sikha. Moral discipline begins with the observance of precepts, which anchor one's actions in principles of conscientious behavior and moral restraint. The undertaking of precepts for the Nikayas, particularly the full code of monastic precepts, is called the training in the higher moral discipline, Ati Sila Sikha. Moral discipline, consistently observed, infuses the mind with purifying forces of moral virtue, generating joy and deeper confidence in the Dhamma. Established upon moral discipline, the disciple takes up the practice of meditation, intended to stabilize the mind, clear away any obstacles to the unfolding of wisdom, because meditation elevates the mind beyond its normal level. This phase of practice is called the training of higher mind, Ati Sita Sikha, because it brings inner stillness and quietude. It is also called the development of serenity, Samatha Bhavana. Successful practices results in deep concentration or mental unification, Samadhi, also known as internal serenity of mind, Achatam Sito Samatha. The most eminent types of concentration recognized in the Nikayas are the four jhanas, which constitute right concentration, Samma Samadhi, of the Noble Eightfold Path. Beyond the jhanas lie the four formless attainments, Arupa Samadhi, which carry the process of mental unification to still subtler levels. The third stage of practice is the training in higher wisdom, Ati Panya Sikha, designated to awaken direct insight into the true nature of things as disclosed by Gautama Buddha's dispensation. This will be dealt with in detail in the following chapter. The first section below is a miscellaneous of short epigrams that stress the needs for mental cultivation. The sayings occurs in pair. In each pair, the first member signals the dangers of uncultivated mind. The second extols the benefit of the cultivated mind. The uncultivated mind is easily prey to the defilements of greed, hatred, and delusion, and their offshoots. The defilements generate unwholesome karma, which brings painful results both in this life and future lives. Since the defilements are cause of our suffering and bondage, the path to liberation necessarily involves a meticulous process of mental training intended to subdue them and to ultimately uproot them from their nesting place in deep recesses of the mind. From development of the mind arises happiness, arises freedom, and arises peace. Development of the mind for the Nikayas means that the development of serenity, samatha, insight, vipassana. It says that when serenity is developed, it leads to concentration and the liberation of the mind from such emotional defilements as lust and ill will, When insight is developed, it leads to the higher wisdom of insight into the true nature of phenomenon and permanently liberates the mind from ignorance. Thus, the two things most needed to master the mind are serenity and insight. Since concentration is the basis for wisdom, the Nikayas usually treat the development of serenity as the precursor to the development of insight. However, because the aptitudes of meditators differ, several sutras allow for alternative approaches to this sequence. It speaks of the four approaches to mental cultivation. The first one is the first approach. The classical one is to develop serenity first and insight afterward. By serenity, it is meant that the jhanas, or according to the Pali commentators or commentaries, a state bordering on the jhanas called axis, or a threshold concentration, upachara samadhi. A second approach is to develop insight first and serenity after. Since there can be no real insight without concentration, such meditators, presumptively people with sharp intellectual faculties, must initially use concentration as the basis for acquiring insight into the true characteristics of phenomena. However, it seems that such concentration, though sufficient for insight, is not strong enough to allow for a breakthrough to the supra-mundane path. These meditators must therefore return to the task of unifying the mind before resuming the work of insight. Such insight, based on concentration, culminates in the supra-mundane path. A third approach is to develop serenity and insight in tandem. Meditators who take this approach first attain a particular level of concentration, such as jhana or formless attainment, and then employ them to the basis of insight. Having developed insight, they then return to concentration, attain a different jhana or formless attainment, and use that as the base for insight. Thus they proceed until they reach the supra-mundane path. The description of the fourth approach is somewhat obscure. The sutra says that a monk's mind is seized by agitation about the teachings, and then sometime later he gains concentration and attains the supra-mundane path. This statement suggests a person initially driven by such intense desire to understand the Dhamma that he or she cannot focus clearly upon the meditative object. Later, when the aid of certain supporting conditions, this person manages to subdue the mind, gain concentration, and attain the supra-mundane path. Again, this confirms that both serenity and insight are necessary. It also indicates that skills needed for their respective practice. The cultivation of serenity requires skill in steadily composing, unifying, and concentrating the mind. The cultivation of insight requires skills in observing, investigating, and discerning conditioned phenomenon, spoken as sankhara, mental formation. In line with the preceding text, the sutra confirms that some meditators begin by developing internal serenity of the mind, others by developing higher wisdom of insight into phenomenon. Others develop both in tandem. But while meditators may start off differently, eventually they must all strike a healthy balance between serenity and insight. The exact point of balance between the two will differ from one person to another. But when a meditator achieves the appropriate balance, serenity and insight join forces to issue in the knowledge and vision of the Four Noble Truths, Ariya Satcha. This knowledge and vision, the world-transcending wisdom, occurs in four distinct installments, the four stages of realization, which in sequence permanently destroy ignorance, along with the afflicted defilements. It subdues these defilements under the expressions, the fetters, and undecaying tendencies. The main impediments to the development of serenity and insight are collectively called the five hindrances, which have already met an extended account of the gradual training. It states that just as differing impurities of water prevents us from clearly seeing the reflection of our face in a bowl of water, so the 5 hindrances prevents us from properly understanding our own good and the good for others. A meditator's initial efforts therefore have to be devoted to the task of overcoming the hindrances. Once these overcome, success is assured in the practice of serenity and insight. Now, it compares the successive stages in the purification of the mind to the refinement of gold. The meditating monk begins by removing the gross impurity of bodily, verbal, or mental conduct. This is achieved by moral discipline and vigilant introspection. Then he eliminates the middle level of impurities of unwholesome thoughts, the thoughts of sensuality, the thoughts of ill will, and the thoughts of harmfulness. Next comes the subtle impurities of meandering thoughts. Finally, he must eliminate thoughts about the Dhamma, the subtlest obstacle. When such distracting thoughts are removed, the monk attains mental unification, equal deep power. The basis for the 6 direct knowledges, abhinya hok, or the 6 bases of abhinya, culminating in arihatship. The knowledge of this destruction of taints, asavas. The Nikaya sometimes compare the process of training the mind to taming the wild animal, just as the animal trainer has to use various techniques to bring that animal, the monkey mind, under control. The meditator has to draw upon various methods to subdue the mind. It is not enough to be acquainted with one meditation technique. One must be skilled in the number of methods, included and intended as antidotes to specific mental obstruction. Gautama Buddha explains 5 techniques he called signs, nimitta, that a monk might deploy to eliminate unwholesome thoughts connected with lust, hatred, and delusion. One who succeeds in overcoming distracting thoughts by using of these nimittas, techniques, is called the master of the courses of thought. The sutra teaches various techniques of meditation aimed at inducing concentration. Unpopular formula pits specific meditation subject against unwholesome mental states they are intended to rectify. Thus, the meditation to the unattractive nature of the body is the remedy for sensual lust, love, and kindness, and its remedy for ill will. Mindfulness of breathing is the remedy for restlessness, and the perception of impermanence is the remedy for conceit, the I am. The ego. The perception of impermanence is the subject of insight meditation. The other 3 subject of serenity meditation. Loving kindness is the first of the 4 divine beholders, the Brahma Viharas. Or immeasurable states, apamana, briefly discussed in chapter 5. Boundless loving kindness, compassion, altruistic joy, and equanimity. These are respectively the antidotes to ill will, harmfulness, discontent, and partiality. Since we already introduced the standard canonical passage on the divine abodes in connection with the meditation on basis for merit, see text or chapter 5. To shed a different spotlight on this practice, I have included here as text, Roman numeral 8:6, the famous simile of the saw, a passage that shows loving kindness in action. Through the centuries, the most popular meditation subject among lay Buddhists have probably been the 6 recollection, the 6 anusati of the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, morality, generosity, and the devatas. Text Roman numeral 8:7 is an important canonical source for these meditation. Their themes are especially close to the hearts and everyday experiences of people living household lives in a culture imbued with Buddhist values. These meditation practices in turn enrich and uplift their lives, bringing them into closer spiritual contact with ideals of religious faith. The first three are primarily devotional recollections that build up confidence in the triple gem. But while they begin with faith, they temporarily cleanse the minds of defilements and conduce to sustained concentration. The meditation of moral discipline developed from one's observance of the precepts, a practice aimed at self-benefit. The recollection of generosity builds up one's practice of giving. An altruistic practice, the recollection of the devatas, is a contemplation of the fruits of one's faith, morality, generosity, and wisdom as they mature in future lives. The discourse, generally considered to offer the most comprehensive instruction on meditation practice, is Satipatthana Sutra. Two versions of this sutra exist, a longer version in the Dikha Nikaya and the middle-length version in the Majjhima Nikaya. The former differs from the latter only by extended analysis of the Arya Satya, the Four Noble Truths, which may have originally been an early commentary incorporated into the discourse. The middle-length version of the Majjhima Nikaya is included here in text Roman numeral 8.8. An entire chapter in the Samyutta Nikaya, the Satipatthana Samyutta, is also devoted to the system of meditation. It does not recommend a single meditation object, nor even a single method of meditation. Its purpose, rather, is to explain how to establish the mode of contemplation needed to arrive at realization of nibbida, the appropriate frame of mind to be established, as implied by the title of the sutra. It is called establishment of mindfulness. The word satipatthana should probably be understood as compounded of sati, mindfulness, and upatthana, establishment. Hence, establishment of mindfulness would be rendering the best, captures the original meaning. According to the standard formulas that accompanies each exercise, a satipatthana is a mode of dwelling. Viharati, the mode of dwelling, involves observation of objects in the proper frame of mind. The frame of mind consists of three positive qualities: atapa, energy; sati, mindfulness; and sammapachana, clear comprehension. The word sati originally meaning memory, but in the present context, it signifies recollection of the present, a sustained awareness of what is happening to us within us on each occasion of experience. Mindfulness, in its initial stages, is concerned with keeping the contemplative mind continually on that object, which means keeping the object continually present to the mind. Mindfulness prevents the mind from slipping away, from drifting off under the sway of random thoughts into mental proliferation and forgetfulness. Mindfulness is often said to occur in close conjunction with clear comprehension, a clear knowledge and understanding of what one is experiencing. An opening formula of the sutta says that one engages in this practice after having subdued longing and dejection in regard to the world. Vinaya loki apacha domanasam. The expression, having subdued, not need be taken to imply that one must first overcome longing and dejection, which according to the commentary signify greed, signify aversion, and thus represents the five hindrances, before one can start the practice of satipatthana. The expression might be understood to mean that practice is itself the means of overcoming longing and dejection. Thus, while subduing the obstructive influence of greed and aversion, the meditator arouses the positive quality of energy, mindfulness, and clear comprehension, and contemplates four objective domains: the body, the feelings, the state of mind, and the phenomenon that arises. It is these four objective domains that differentiates mind observation into four establishment of mindfulness. The four objective domains divide the explanatory portion of the Satipatthana Sutra in four major sections. Two of these sections, the first of the fourth, have several subdivisions. When the divisions are added up, we obtain altogether 21 meditation objects. Several of these can be used as means to develop serenity, samatha. But the Satipatthana Sutta as a whole seems especially designed for the development of insight, vipassana. The main section with their divisions are as follows. 1. Contemplation of the body, kaya nupassana. This comprises of 14 subjects of meditation, mindfulness of breathing, contemplating of the four postures, clear comprehension of activities, attention to unattractive nature of the body, viewed by way of organs and tissues, attention to elements in 9 charnel ground, contemplation basis on corpus in different states of decomposition. 2. Vedana nupassana, feeling as differentiating into 3 primary types: pleasant, painful, neither pleasant nor painful, which are each further distinguished into carnal and spiritual feelings. However, because these are all merely different types of feelings, the contemplation of feeling is considered one subject. The third one is Sita Nupassana, contemplation of the mind. This is one subject of contemplation. The mind is differentiated into 8 pairs of contrasting states of mind. And fourth, Dhamma Nupassana, contemplating of arisen phenomenon. The word Dhamma here probably signifies phenomenon, which are classified into 5 categories governed by Gautama Buddha's teaching, the Dhamma. Thus, Dhamma Nupassana has a dual meaning. Dhammas, phenomenon, contemplated by way of the Dhamma, the teaching. The 5 categories are the 5 hindrances, the 5 skandhas, the 6 internal and external sense bases, and the 7 factors of enlightenment, and the Ariya Satya, the 4 noble truths. Although not specified in the sutra, a progressive sequence stems to be implied by the terms describing each contemplation. In mindfulness of breathing, one moves to subtle levels of quintessence. In contemplation of feeling, one moves towards non-carnal feelings, and the other neither painful nor pleasant. In contemplation of the mind, one moves towards states of mind that are concentrated and liberated. These all suggest a progressive contemplation brings enhanced concentration. In the contemplation of arisen phenomenon, the emphasis shifts towards insight. One begins by observing and overcoming the 5 hindrances. The overcoming of the hindrances marks success in concentration. With the concentrated mind, one contemplates the 5 skandhas and the 6 sense bases, ayatana. As contemplation gains, the 7 factors of enlightenment becomes manifest. The development of the 7 enlightenment factors culminates in the knowledge of the 4 noble truths. Knowledge of the 4 noble truths liberates the mind from defilements and thus leads to the attainments of nibbida. This system of teaching fulfills the potential ascribed to it by Gautama Buddha of leading directly to the realization of nibbida. Each major contemplative exercises is supplemented by auxiliary sections, a refrain with 4 subdivisions. The first states that the meditator comprises the object internally with his or her own experience, externally externally, reflectively, consider it as occurring within experience of others. And both, this ensures that one obtains a comprehensive, balanced view of the object. The second portion states that the meditator contemplates the object as subject to origination, as subject to vanishing, and a subject for both origination and vanishing. This brings light to characteristics of impermanence and thus leads to insight into the three characteristics: anicca, dukkha, anatta, tilakkana, the three characteristics. The third state that the meditator is simply aware of the bare object to the extent necessary for constant mindfulness and knowledge. And the fourth describes the meditator as dwelling in a state complete of detachment, non-clinging to anything in the world. Now, in the Satipatthana Sutra, mindfulness of breathing, anapanasati, is included as merely one meditation subject among others, but the Nikayas assign it to the position of fundamental importance. Gautama Buddha said he used mindfulness of breathing as the main meditation subject of the attainment of enlightenment. Putto, putto, putto. During his teaching careers, he occasionally went into the seclusion to devote himself to the concentration gained through mindfulness of breathing. He confers on to the unique honor by calling it Tataha Kata's dwelling. Mindfulness of breathing is the subject of the entire chapter of the Samyutta Nikaya, Anapana Samyutta Sutra, whereas the Satipatthana Sutta explains mindfulness of breathing by 4 steps. The sutra in this collection expand the practice to 16 steps. Text Roman numeral 8-9 from the Anapana Samyutta describes 16 steps. Since these steps are not necessarily sequential but partially overlap, there might be thought of the phases rather than actual steps. The 16 phases are grouped into 4 tetrads, each of which corresponds to one of the 4 establishments of mindfulness. The first tetrad contains the 4 phases mentioned in the Satipatthana Sutra in the section on contemplation of the body. But the other tetrads extends the practice to contemplation of feelings, contemplation of the mind, and contemplation of mental phenomena. Thus, the development of mindfulness of breathing can fulfill not just one, but all 4 establishments of mindfulness. The 4 establishments of mindfulness based on mindfulness of breathing, in turn, fulfill the 7 factors of enlightenment. And these, in turn, fulfill true knowledge and liberation, vimutti or moksha. This exposition that shows mindfulness of breathing into the complete subject of meditation that brings with simple attention to breath and culminates into the permanent liberation of mind. Finally, text Roman numeral 8:10. Gautama's Buddha's chief disciple, Venerable Sariputra, testifies to his own achievement of mastery over the mind. In reply to the question from Venerable Ananta, he explains how he is able to dwell for a whole day in each of the jhanas and the formless attainments, and well as in the special attainment called the cessation of perception, sanya vetayita nirota, and feeling. In each case, because he is an arihat, he can do so without grasping these attainments with thoughts of I and mine, or having any thoughts or classification of ownership. Note, this series was based on a post on Dhamma Wheel. For the sutracentral.net version, Bhante Sujato has included the full text of the introductions, which were made under available Creative Commons. Which I will cite in the description below. May you be well.